All right, welcome to the Artie Quitter podcast. It's Wednesday, right after. I mean, again, I'd love to get into the Mets right now. I really would. And what the fuck happened in Kansas City last night? Unbelievable, unbelievable. I mean, again, Met fans have got to be murderous right now. And they were forced to stay up till 2:00 in the morning. To watch them lose the way they did, and in the 14th fucking inning. But and again, A-Rod might be a broadcaster. We figured that out. A-Rod was on the analysis team. I can't get into that. Let me tell you something. If A-Rod, you're going to see what this episode of the Artie Quitter podcast is about. You're not going to believe. Like, there's guys scratching their nuts right now, thinking we're going to talk about the Mets and strippers. But something kind of crazy happened where I have probably one of the most impressive guests I've ever had on the show. And I'm not talking about Craig Gass, an impression of a guest, or Justin McKinney. Okay, so anyway, I'll just say this before we get into it. If A-Rod is embraced and given a regular network job on television to analyze baseball, I will never watch an inning of baseball again, ever again. Now, I won't go to the games. I won't watch the games on TV. If I'm ever blessed with having a son, which I doubt will happen, I may have a chubby Filipino kid in Vegas somewhere that's 10 years old now. You never know. If he comes back into my life, I don't give a shit. He's not knowing about baseball. I won't take him to the game. He's going to have to find out from some uncle. And that's it. Uncle Dan is going to take him to the game. Believe me, I'm worried about that too.
Go Cubs!
Yeah, I'm worried about him being brought up by Dan, but the Rick Steves aspect. So anyway. Okay, that being said, well, I'd love to get into all that baseball, but today I have an interesting show that has to do with something that came up yesterday in the political world, the national security world, the terrorism world. That has to do with everything. And of course, the panel I put together all the time when I have something like this to talk about. Joe Matarese, comedian. I feel like we're doing one of those shitty Fox News shows where, here's Tom Malou. And so Joe Matarese is a comedian and a regular on the show. And Justin McKinney is a really great comic, smart guy, interesting guy, and is a comedian as well. So he's here for the first time. What's up, Justin? Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome. Thanks, Artie.
Well, okay, so I'm going to tell you why it's lucky that we have Justin here for this particular thing, and it was just a coincidence because Justin used to be in law enforcement. What's your history? You were a cop? Were you a cop?
I was.
Yeah, where?
I was a deputy sheriff
in New Hampshire.
Maine.
Maine, okay.
Rural Maine, but it's all the same. Everybody who's not from Maine, New Hampshire. But deputy sheriff, rural patrol.
Right.
I did it for 7 years in the 90s.
Okay, so you have a history of law enforcement, and you might your laws, courts, all that shit, because having a basic knowledge of that might help you understand what I'm going to say. I will say this: there's some people in my audience that are never going to understand what I'm about to say.
Is that me?
No. It's
Am I going to understand any of it?
Joe Matarese is such an odd guy. He's clearly a very intelligent guy. I don't know if he ever had his IQ tested, but I bet it's high.
Really?
I mean, I do. I'm saying, but I just think he's. The other thing about Joe is he might be the most riddled with OCD, neurosis comic I've ever known. Certainly, in the most that's not Jewish.
Yeah. Can I tell you? I was supposed to be on Red Eye tonight,
right?
But they had to. I told Joe it got canceled because of the GOP debate. He goes, "What's the GOP?"
You didn't know that it was an acronym, like you didn't know the Grand Old Party Republic. You had no idea. Okay, so that's ignorance. I mean, it is. That's not knowing.
Jeez, Justin, I got you on this.
Man,
I know.
Boschetti
guy.
But that's worth saying.
I said the GOP. I go, you don't know the GOP?
Well, you want me to list the things that you didn't know?
We're all going to get into that. But again, listen, that is kind of...
Wait, I'll give them to you later.
Especially nowadays.
Justin didn't know the Academy Awards and the Oscars were the same. He didn't know that.
All right, well, I will admit...
Two separate things.
Admit that Justin seems less gay of the two of you. Well, you didn't know the Oscars. You didn't know the Tonys were the same as... Joe doesn't know about the Republican Party. Well, you didn't know the Oscars were the same as... Joe, really, that was a bad one to pick. Bad one to pick. But so, Justin, Red Eye, so are you a regular on? That's a Fox News show?
No, that was my first time. I was literally coming down here to do Red Eye, Gotham Live, and then Joe, my good buddy, hooked me up with this. And,
You're a huge
Made this
Artie
happen.
fan, and he's always saying, I love to do Artie's show. I go, well, Artie seems to like you, Justin. He's brought you up a few times. Seems to be a fan of your comedy.
This is great. No, and it is a perfect time to do this. So Red Eye is one of those shows on Fox I was just talking about. Are you a Republican, openly right-wing guy?
I'm independent. No, I'm independent.
I
There's
am,
things
too.
I agree with on both.
Right.
Anyone that's way right or way left, I kind of can't relate.
It makes no
If you know
sense.
what's going to come out of their mouth on every issue, every time,
Right.
it's almost like they're a robot.
I couldn't agree more. It makes no sense because you have to look at everything individually. And there's a lot of that going on where it's one extreme to the other, but Fox News is certainly in that category. But Red Eye, so you're doing Red Eye tonight?
Tom, I was going to about the GOP debate.
Oh, the GOP debate got bumped.
Yeah,
okay.
so they had to switch things around.
All right, what about the Academy Awards? Is that
I'm doing that. Yeah, yeah.
Do you know Chris Rock is hosting the GOP debate? All right, so here we go. I don't know if anybody has a general knowledge of the story of a guy named Ed Snowden. He was in the news, all over the news in the summer of 2013. You couldn't put on CNN or Fox News without seeing his face. He worked for the NSA, the National Security is Association What is it? The
Agency, I think it is.
National Security Agency. And basically, they're the main agency that enforced the Patriot Act. After 9/11, Bush was almost given just unlimited power to do what he had to do, and this country gave him sort of a mandate, like go nuts to fight terrorism. We all wanted blood. Before 9/11, you needed a court order. The NSA needed a court order that was sort of difficult to get at that point if they wanted to essentially spy on an American citizen. If they thought an American citizen was going to be guilty of terrorism, treason, whatever the hell it was, you needed a court order. Now remember, this pre 9/11 doesn't necessarily mean terrorism wasn't a big deal. The USS Cole had been hit, the embassy in Africa, all that stuff happened that everybody said should have been nipped in the bud by Clinton, and it didn't. And the CIA and the FBI, all this stuff came out that there was this thing up called the Wall where they didn't trade information. There's a really, really frustrating documentary about 9/11 where the CIA and the FBI had this rivalry and they did not trade information with each other. Just out of pure, almost immature bullshit. Like they didn't want to have the other person get one up on them. And one of them, I forget which one, knew that Mohammed Atta and a couple of these other guys who were the terrorists on 9/11 were in the country. And all they had to do was give the other agency this information. And it probably would have prevented 9/11. Almost definitely would have. And because of that wall, 9/11 happened. So, there was a lot of really, really tense times coming up. People were in a lot of fucking trouble, and heads were going to roll about people knowing shit, just knowing stuff about people. So the general, it was the first time that the CIA knew. The CIA knew the information, didn't give it to the FBI. So that's how that worked out. But for the first time with war, any American citizen could be the enemy. Like a terrorist could be any guy with a backpack could leave it, by a train, and like what happened in Boston a couple of years ago, and it blows up. So it's not like World War II where the people were in uniform and you knew, who they were. Even Vietnam was more clear who the enemy was. So basically, we used that fear. Bush and his cronies sort of used that fear to get the Patriot Act going, which basically said, okay, now we're gonna need less permission, way less, sort of way more of a lenient situation to just spy on people. It doesn't have to be this strict court order the way it was. It's going to be a court order and it'll be open, but it's probably going to be just a matter of, okay, we need this information. A judge will sign off and we're going to get it. We could just say anybody, Joe Matarese, Justin McKinney, Artie Lang, Joe Blow, who owns a deli in Indiana. We think he might be a terrorist. We want his information, and the NSA could say that to this court, and the Patriot Act would let them get it pretty much, with no problem. Okay, so the problem is the NSA needs people working for them to make this happen. And there was really a gray area on whether or not this was right, even with the terrorism stuff. Like, what is their agenda? You know, if they just wanted to get information on someone who they didn't suspect, what's their agenda? It's very un-American. You know, privacy is something that we cherish in this country. So that sort of morphed. The Patriot Act morphed into a situation where, for some reason, that whole open court thing changed to a secret court. Right then, there was a secret court.
Yes.
That basically said what? I mean, you know,
it was Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, and it had been around since the late 70s, but they never used it until it was only supposed to be used for foreign spies. And then after 9/11, they started using it for Americans that took phone calls from Europe, and it was just basically a yes. There were no civilians in the FISA court, and they just kept on any warrant they wanted, the surveillance wanted, they gave.
So the Patriot Act turns into that somehow, to where the NSA says, look, we can get information on all these people that we might want, and who knows what their agenda is. It may have nothing to do with terrorism, and that is fucking scary. So the problem is the NSA needs these people to work for them to execute all this stuff, and a lot of them are these sort of nerdy computer geeks who can write code, decipher stuff, like crack, like this, like Ed Snowden is a guy who, him and a bunch of his friends, you could have supposedly a 10 letter or 10 digit password, and at one point he says that they have access to technology where they could try 1 trillion guesses every second. a trillion guesses every second. So they could crack any password. Like if they find out it's a 10-digit thing, boom, they could get through. So you need to develop this type of stuff. You need, the NSA might have these evil people who want to make something happen, but they don't know how to do it. They just know they want to do it. So they have to hire people, a bunch of people, to execute it. And all those people might not agree with them, is the problem. All those people, some of them might be good people who don't like what's going on. And after a while, I might want to tell people what's going on. Like, it's called a whistleblower. The movie The Insider was about a guy who did it with Big Tobacco. Russell Crowe played a guy who worked for Big Tobacco. An example of what I just said, but in the tobacco world. This guy was a scientist who developed cigarettes and filters and nicotine delivery systems. What he called it for Big Tobacco. Eventually, he said, "Look, these guys are lying to Congress. It does cause cancer. It is addictive." And he blew the whistle on these guys, and he was up against a very powerful situation. 60 Minutes sort of saved his life. I mean, you're talking about Big Tobacco, billions of dollars against this guy and his family. And so that's what a whistleblower takes on when they do this. So it's a brave fucking thing to do, just in the name of honor. So the NSA, that's that tenfold. I mean, now you're talking about money, you're talking about the government. This guy, Ed Snowden, was one of those guys who worked for the NSA. He worked for a contracting company that was hired by the NSA to build things, that the NSA needed, and it's big money, obviously. Okay, this guy decides, fuck it, I am going to blow the whistle on the NSA. A major decision. He goes, I can't take this. He goes, I'm seeing these drones on my computer all over the world, like in front of people's houses. They have drones just like outside, and you could click on them. Him and all the people he worked with in his office, picture like a big cubicle, but instead of selling insurance, they have access to all this shit that can help the NSA gather information on people. You could just click on something and you could watch a person's house anywhere in the world being spied on by the NSA. And he saw all these people being, their information being gathered by the NSA for no fucking other reason then they just wanted it. They didn't even have to be terrorists or suspected of it. So Snowden says, look, I have to do this. Now, he begins, the only right way to do it is you can't tell anyone in your life you're going to do this. It's a very, very, very difficult thing to do, because if somebody else knows, you're putting them in danger. So he doesn't tell his live-in girlfriend who was about to marry, like almost a fiance. None of his family, none of his friends, none of his coworkers at the NSA. He starts gathering all this information, and it's a lot. It's stuff. I mean, information about agents that the CIA has all over the world, undercover names, just tons of shit that the NSA, if they knew it got out, would be like, oh, fuck, we can't believe this is happening. And the other thing is he's going to tell basically the world what they were doing. The NSA at some point, the head of the NSA, I forget his name now, I'll ask Greenwald when he comes on. I'll explain who that is when he comes on. The head of the NSA was now lying to Congress. Congress held hearings about it. And the NSA, they said to the head of the NSA, are you doing this? Are you gathering information, texts? If you order stuff from Amazon, they could look at it. Anything at all. So, who is that him?
No.
Okay. And the head of the NSA blatantly looks in Congress's face and says, no, we're not doing that. Major crime. So this guy says, I got to do something about this. He gathers all this information and he disappears. So now the NSA is a little suspicious. He's not in work for a week. First he claims he's sick. He's not in work for like 10 days. And now, everybody's sort of starting to panic. What the fuck happened to this guy? He knows everything. This movie, Citizen 4, which won the Oscar for Best Documentary on HBO.
Did it also win an Academy Award?
It won for the best GOP debate. Well, yeah, it won both an Academy Award and an Oscar for Best Documentary. It's an HBO documentary. It's all about what I just said. It's about this guy, Ed Snowden, but it's also about the co-star of this movie is this documentary. And to me, it's a movie because it's unbelievable the sort of drama that goes on. The co-star is this guy, Glenn Greenwald, and he's the reporter who Ed Snowden decided to tell his story. He said, he's the conduit I'm going to use to tell his story because he knew that this guy was an honorable guy and would have the balls to stand up to the NSA, and he knew because of articles he had been writing for The Guardian, I believe at the time, online, how much he couldn't stand people who were hard on whistleblowers. He was very, very pro whistleblower, and he hated the fact that Obama, and again, all politicians, they lie, they bullshit. Obama ran for office in 2008, his first term. One of the big things was, I'm going to embrace these whistleblowers. I'm going to be friendly towards them. And when he got into office, stuff happens like it does with all of these motherfucking politicians. They get compromised. He not only did he not help the whistleblowers, he did a 180. He became anti them. He became their enemy, Obama. He made it harder for these guys to rat out these big companies. And Greenwald couldn't stand that. So because of that stance, Ed Snowden picks this guy Greenwald to be the reporter. This guy Greenwald accepts. He gets in contact with Greenwald through the documentary the woman who directed and produced this documentary. Her name's Laura Petrus. Puttress. She's a brilliant documentary maker. Unbelievable. First, Snowden contacted her because he had seen a film she had made. She contacted Greenwald. They both fly to Hong Kong, where this guy is held up in a fucking hotel room. And they find out where he is. They say, look, Snowden says, I'm going to tell you this, where I am, and I'm trusting you guys. Over secure emails, they show you these insane emails, these encrypted emails that he's sending them. And it's like a spy movie. Here's how you find me. He tells them what to do. Meet me in the lobby of this hotel in Hong Kong. I'll be doing a Rubik's Cube. That's how you know who I am. Come up to me and say, where's the restaurant? I'll show you where it is. I'll say, as a matter of fact, I know where it is. You don't have to go upstairs. Follow me. Just follow me like you would if I was showing you where the restaurant was. Casually get on the elevator with me. We'll go up to my room and we'll start this process. So it's the documentary maker, Laura, with her camera. It's Greenwald who's going to write this story, the reporter, and this guy, Ed Snowden. They go up, and the documentary basically starts 10 minutes after exposition. It starts with you see Snowden in a hotel room in fucking Hong Kong about to do this. And it's really, he unravels his story to Greenwald, and he's writing it, and Greenwald recognizes the mammoth thing he's listening to. Again, it's unbelievable drama, and it's great. This guy, Glenn Greenwald, Dan, is that him, by the way?
I'm calling now.
Oh, okay. This guy, Glenn Greenwald, this is such a, and I hope I did some sort of justice to that, setting this up. Again, an idiot like me, I mean, literally, a slob like me, I have a podcast in my kitchen. But because I was on the Howard Stern Show for 8 years, people kind of know my name. I I see this fucking documentary. I'm sitting on my couch, literally. I watch it. I pick up my phone. Think about what the world is. It's become compared to what it was just 10 years ago, 20 years ago. I pick up my fucking phone. I find him on Twitter. I tweet, I go, hey, a big fan of yours. That documentary was unbelievable. I just watched Citizen 4. Would you do my podcast? I have a podcast. I go, my name is Artie Lang. I go, Google me. You'll see that I'm not like just some idiot. I'm an idiot, but I'm not just, I'm an idiot who's actually been, I'm in show business. You might know my name. I'm not totally illegitimate. I'm a C-list. I said I'm a C-list comedian who has a podcast. But maybe you want to tell the story somewhere. The guy fucking 10 minutes later on my fucking phone, my phone beeps. A guy in another part of the fucking world says, yeah, Artie, like he kind of lets me know that he sort of knows who I am. Because I'd love to do it. Let me know. We'll set it up. But we got to be careful the way we do it. I give it to Danny, my producer. He sort of can't believe I got the guy to do it because he knows the story. And we set up this date to do this the interview. Is he on the line? Okay, so with that, here's Glenn Greenwald, the reporter I'm talking about. Glenn, first of all, hey man, Artie Lang, thanks for doing this, buddy.
Yeah, happy to do it.
I'll just say real quick, obviously, you're probably used to talking to people way more knowledgeable about the whole situation than I am. I've become knowledgeable. I knew about Snowden because I do follow the news as a comic, and in the summer of 2013, I remember seeing you and him all over CNN and Fox News, and being a guy who sort of is a rooter for maybe the underdog and whistleblowers. It was definitely a story that was interesting to me. But, you go on with your life and you move on, and you don't really see exactly what happened with it. Then I heard about Citizen 4. I heard it won awards and everything. But then one day I got time to kill about a month ago, and I see it on HBO On Demand, Citizen 4. I figure I'll watch it. Basically, that knowledge is how I start watching this film. And I obviously, I'm blown away by it. And besides Snowden, I was just really impressed with you as just a human being, as a person, with your intelligence and your willingness to take risks and how passionate you were about this. And I tweeted you to try to get you to come on because that's how I really felt, and you were nice enough to say yes. And that's where we're at. I first of all want to say, because I'm interested, how is your life right now? Based on what happened a few years ago, is your life one that is sort of a hard life? Are you under a lot of stress because of what happened? Are you happier because of what happened? Do you have regrets? What's your life like now based on what happened?
Well, it definitely, when someone hands you, many hundreds of thousands of pages of top secret documents from the most secretive agency within the world's most powerful government, it of course presents a lot of challenges and a lot of stresses in terms of threats that you're getting and dangers that you have to encounter and just all kinds of decisions that you have to navigate. But at the same time, when you go into journalism, as I decided to do about 10 years ago, this is the kind of story you live to get and you live to be able to do, which is, to be able to shine light on what the most powerful factions in the world are doing in the dark in a way that triggers a global debate. So, it's been difficult in a lot of ways, but it's also been incredibly gratifying, and I have zero regrets and would do the same thing in a heartbeat if presented the opportunity. That's
amazing. But listen, I mean, knowing you from watching the documentary, I kind of figured that would be your answer. Ed Snowden is a guy who picked you from what the documentary shows. It opens up with you in 2011 doing an article about how you're disenchanted with Obama and the way he sort of flip-flopped on his whole view on whistleblowers and stuff like that. That was a subject very dear to you, and I think that's why obviously Snowden picked you. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, I had been writing about the attack on whistleblowers under a president who was elected based on a campaign promise to bring the most transparent administration in American history, and he's actually prosecuted more whistleblowers than all prior administrations combined. But I was also writing a lot about surveillance and privacy, but I think most of what attracted Snowden and caused him to come to me was really my views on journalism, because he was very afraid that he was going to unravel his life to bring this information to the public. And if he had gone to, say, the New York Times or NBC News,
Right.
being how subservient those media outlets have been to the U.S. government, he was really worried that they would get bullied or pressured or persuaded not to publicize most of it. And he wanted to make sure that he was going to find a journalist who wouldn't care what the U.S. government thought and would continue to publish even in the wake of threats and other kinds of tactics. And I think he felt like he found that in me.
That's amazing. Think about the irony in that. The New York Times, who's supposed to be, is become known for maybe being an organization that would be so on this guy's side, a friend to this guy, but because they've become so big, they have conflicts of interest and are vulnerable to what you just said, bullying. But even with that, he had to pick a guy who would still follow through on it and take those risks. And part of what's so amazing about this story is, picking you was just like a gem. That was like a lottery ticket. And it doesn't show a lot about your personal relationship with him in the documentary. Did you guys develop a really strong friendship, and does that friendship still exist today?
Definitely. I mean, when you go through something that intense and that risky and that profound with somebody, of course, a bond develops, and I have a huge amount of respect for the choice that he made to essentially sacrifice his entire life to bring this information to the public. And of course, we talk constantly through today. And I think it's a really critical point that you've raised now a couple times, which is, it's easy to say, oh, the journalists like me were brave and courageous and the like. But a really big part of that was, we flew to Hong Kong. We didn't actually know anything about the person we were going to meet other than the fact that he had claimed to have all these documents and had provided us with some. I didn't know anything about him. I didn't know his name or his age or anything. And so you get to Hong Kong and you see this 29-year-old kid, who was raised in a very ordinary way, like in a lower middle class background. He didn't finish high school. He was sort of this obscure employee in this massive corporation, totally normal and average in every way. And yet through nothing more than an act of conscience and an act of courage, he literally changed the world. And so when you see that, you get really inspired and you feel like you want to do justice to the choice that he made by being as fearless and doing it in the same spirit that he sort of made his original decision.
Well, no, listen, I agree with everything you just said, but I think you're being very humble in what you're saying, because obviously you took a huge risk too, and risked a lot about maybe, blowing up your whole life, which in maybe a small fraction of way and a big fraction did. Personally, and you guys had other parts of your life besides work that were really affected by this. The other thing that's great, you bring up.
For a long time, the U.S. government was threatening that if I came back to the U.S., they were going to arrest me.
Right.
Same with my reporting partner, Laura Poitras. Of course, they did quite notoriously detain my partner, David Miranda, in London and Heathrow Airport for 11 hours under a terrorism law. And there's still an active criminal investigation in the UK, which prevents us from ever traveling there.
Wow.
So you're right. There were risks, for sure. Yeah. And you get, widely publicly attacked in all sorts of ways as well.
Yeah, that part of the documentary in particular, when your partner is detained at Heathrow, when you go running and get him, again, the suspense of this documentary, it's real. But it's really like a movie that's scripted. You can't believe what unfolds. The way, when you find him and you get to comfort him a little bit, you could see the pain in his face, what he went through, and someone who didn't sign up for this kind of, how is your relationship with your partner today? Is he okay, and you still together?
Oh, yeah, we're still together, and actually it brought us closer together. It actually emboldened me even more to do a lot of the reporting, because it made me realize just how abusive these governments are willing to be with their power. And that makes you realize why there's a free press guaranteed in the Constitution and why they need journalism transparency. And so if anything, it emboldened me further. It also politicized him, and he's become kind of a political activist, whereas previously he was very apolitical. And so, yeah, it definitely injected a lot of energy, I think, and it really did them a big disservice because it showed the world a face that was really quite troubling and quite disturbing and abusive to a lot of people.
Right. No, you're right. The ironic thing is that they helped your cause in a big way, I feel.
Definitely.
But I got to tell you, again, the way Laura Petras, who does this, who's the unbelievably talented producer of this documentary and director, the way she sets up the reveal of Ed Snowden, you're right. You don't know what you're going to find here. These emails you guys are getting and what this person's saying, and the idea of using a female voice. Is that Laura's voice, by the way, who does the reading? The emails?
Yeah, the voiceover is Laura's. Yeah,
right. She reads the emails herself, and God, I mean, I don't know if she went to acting school, but what a brilliant dramatic way she did that. She reads the Snowden emails at first. You don't know who this guy is, and she gets in contact with you, and you go over there, and the way she reads the email of that first day of meeting him, I'll be holding a Rubik's Cube. Ask me where the restaurant is, blah, blah, blah. It's like a James Bond movie. And then out of nowhere, boom, you see this kid who, like you say, is sitting in the room. And now, of course, by now you recognize him if you put on the news in 2013. You say, okay, it's Ed Snowden. But, man, it doesn't look like who you're about to see. You think it's going to be like Steven Seagal in a Bond movie or something.
Yeah, it was that was by far the most just like shocking and disorienting. Part of it was, I think Laura and I, when we talked about it, we're expecting the guy we were going to meet to be in his 50s or 60s, right? Because he was very sophisticated in what he was saying to us beforehand. He obviously had really deep access to very sensitive secrets. So we assumed it was someone senior. And he was also, we knew, willing to sacrifice his whole life. So we figured this must be somebody who's been around for decades and just got so jaded and disillusioned about what he saw that we were just assuming that it was someone older. And when we saw this kid, we were actually... we were off balance for hours. I mean, we thought, is this a fraud? Is this like the lover of the source, or the son? Just every possibility went through our head, and it really took us days to get comfortable, with verifying that Ed Snowden was really what he said he was and had done what he did for the reasons he gave us.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. That's another great point. This is a kid with his whole life ahead of him. He's got this woman in his life who he's probably going to marry, and he's taking the risk of completely destroying that. There's a real human aspect of the documentary. One, of course, is in the sense when you go to Heathrow to get. I'm sorry, David is your partner's name, right?
David.
When you go to get David at Heathrow, there's that part of it. There's the part where you guys walk in just after he gets the email that, she might not be coming, he might never see this woman again in his life. And he's clearly taken aback by that. And then, you try to comfort him, as does Laura. And then he's able to go right back in to the work at hand at helping you bring all this to the world. It's fascinating. Now, you say he helped change the world. I mean, sort of in detail, like, how did he do that in the most basic of ways that you could explain to people who might be listening to a podcast like this? And do you or him, especially you, have any regrets, honestly, in what you did?
I mean, changing the world, I mean, if I go on any continent on the planet, which I've been doing repeatedly for the last 2 years, whether it be South America, North America, Europe, Asia, parts of Africa, if I go and speak about these issues, these revelations, I can fill up any auditorium anywhere in the world because the interest level is so high.
Right.
There has been, for the first time, a global debate about what privacy means in the age of the internet, and the dangers of allowing the government to convert the internet into a realm of mass surveillance where they're constantly monitoring us in ways that technologically in the past were not even remotely possible. So changing people's ideas about what the government is doing, the role the U.S. plays in the world, what a proper journalist does in a democracy, and then having a debate about privacy for the first time is incredibly significant in terms of how the world changes. There have been laws passed in the U.S. There have been court decisions ruling that this surveillance is illegal. There have been ruptures to diplomatic relations. There have been worldwide reform movements that have started. Countries are thinking about how to protect their citizens' internet privacy for the first time technologically. It has changed all sorts of things. It's been like an enormous earthquake. And, I mean, of course, if I went back and looked at specific articles that I wrote or decisions I made about documents, I could probably quibble with some. But on the whole, I mean, I see my role as a journalist and I see my role as a citizen to check those who are in power and to enable people in a democracy to have debate in an informed way. You can have a debate about how much do you want the government spying on the internet, how much privacy is important. But whatever your views are on that, I don't think anyone could stand up and say that we would be better off if Edward Snowden hadn't done what he did and that we remained ignorant about the extent to which our privacy was being compromised by our own governments in secret on the internet.
Yeah, no, ultimately, right. I mean, I have that debate in my head, especially since watching the documentary. And ultimately, yeah, I agree with you. I don't see how any rational thinking person could not agree with how you just put it. There is that moment where you're looking at all the stuff he's showing you, and you do say, you go, my God, you have that gut reaction of, oh, God, this all has to get out. This is just the scale of it. It's unbelievable. And, we should be having, like you said, debates on this, on what's informed debates by real smart people on what we should be doing with this. And, the film does a great job in bringing that out, too, which brings me to, the news yesterday with this bill. This was all over the place, obviously, yesterday. The bill that they want to try to pass, which sort of just it seems to be a step towards unraveling everything Snowden did, going backwards. Try to explain, how you view this bill and how, enormous in a bad or good way it could be for the world if it gets passed.
I think it's so important to realize the role that fear-mongering plays and how governments, not just the American government, but governments all over the world and not just in our time, but throughout history, how critical fear-mongering is to getting citizenry to acquiesce to whatever the government wants. So if you constantly make the citizens of a country afraid of whatever it is, criminals or immigrants or terrorists or Muslims or, pick communists, whatever the villain of the moment is, and then you tell them that we, the government, need more power in order to protect you from those scary people, people will submit to whatever the government wants. And that's what you saw yesterday. 2 years now after Edward Snowden, where the entire government said we've let surveillance go too far, we've let privacy invasions, even by the U.S. spying on its own citizens, become too severe, they essentially pass a bill that says that if you're a private corporation and you turn over huge amounts of data about your customers, not with a search warrant, not because the government thinks the customer did anything wrong, just because they want mass amounts of data, that you be shielded from being sued or otherwise held accountable under the law. It lets the government have additional access to some of the internet infrastructure with no warrants. I mean, I personally am somebody who thinks that, the founders got most of the things right in the Constitution, one of which is that the government can't read our emails and read our correspondence and search our persons unless they can prove that there's a reason to believe that we've done something wrong and they can get a warrant. And that's what's being rapidly eroded in the name of terrorism and Muslims.
You're right. I mean, so basically, you see, that's what a lot of people, when they hear about these bills, they don't understand it in the most basic of ways. But so basically what this bill is saying is just that these corporations, the government would be giving them incentive to give over information on American citizens. Not only do we want you to do it, we're asking you to do it with maybe just, I don't know, when they ask you to do anything, there's always a threat of whatever. But they're saying, if you do this, we'll reward you for it in a real way and for giving us information on just any American citizen you don't need to know the reason. We just want it. And if you do it, here's what we give you. That's what this is saying.
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting because before the Snowden revelations, these companies like Google and Facebook and Yahoo and Apple and Microsoft, they were collaborating with the NSA pretty much without limits. They were giving the NSA whatever they wanted because there was no cost to doing it because nobody knew they were doing it. Now that the Snowden revelations have come out, those companies are really afraid. They're afraid that, the next generation of Internet users, the 8-year-olds, the 4-year-olds, the 12-year-olds, are going to be told by Korean or Brazilian or German companies, don't use Facebook and Google. They'll give your data to the NSA. Use our services instead, and we'll protect your data. So these companies have been trying really hard to show the world that they're willing to protect the privacy of their users, and now the government is trying to put more and more pressure, and as you said, give more and more incentives to change that, to make it so that they get more benefits by helping the government side than they do protecting the privacy of their users. That's what this bill is about.
That is so scary. My God. I mean, what would you say, Glenn, what would you say to an average citizen who is not against this, not for it, not as extreme in any other way? What would you say to just a guy who's indifferent, like a guy who hears about this and goes, what do I care, blah, blah, blah. How would you make that guy, in the most basic of terms, realize how important this is?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people will say, look, I'm not a terrorist, I'm not a pedophile, right? I'm not like a rapist, or really have anything to hide. I don't, mind if the government reads my emails. First of all, we all instinctively understand how important privacy is to being a free individual. It's why we put passwords on our email and social media accounts. It's why we put locks on our bedroom and bathroom doors. If I were to say to somebody, let me put cameras in every room in your house so that I can watch you at all times, people would find that totally creepy. They would probably even call the police. That's because we know that we need a place that we can go to think and explore and experiment without other people's judgmental eyes monitoring and watching us at all times. That's the only way we have freedom to dissent, to be creative, to be individualistic. A watch society is one that is conformist and obedient and submissive. That's why governments love surveillance. And we all understand that instinctively. We all have something to hide. Even if you're not a terrorist, even if you're not a pedophile, there are all things we don't want other people to know about what we're doing, and that's a really important part of what it means to be a free individual.
That's such a great point. And think about America, besides science, creativity, and I don't know, if F. Scott Fitzgerald knew he was being watched all the time, he might not have written The Great Gatsby. Or if Thomas Edison knew he was being watched all the time, and ironically enough, he was inventing the stuff that allows you to do that. But I mean, maybe he doesn't invent something because he might figure someone's going to judge me for this reason, that reason. It puts a limit on your ability to go further into your mind. It puts a limit on your ability to expand your mind. And if you, I mean, any creative person can relate to that. Before it's a reason a play opens up in Boston before it goes to New York. You want to do it. You want to practice somewhere else before everybody sees it.
No, there are these fascinating psychological studies that prove that human beings who think they're being watched or who might be watched give answers to questions that they think society wants them to say rather than the answers that they really believe.
Absolutely.
It snuffs out creativity and dissent. Which is, you just read 1984. The whole point of that novel that we all read in high school is that that the best way to control people's behavior is to make them think that they're being monitored and spied on at all times. It creates a prison in the brain that's actually more effective than putting people in some physical cage somewhere because it prevents them from stepping out of what orthodoxy and sort of societal piety demands of them.
And it also doesn't affect, besides affecting their world, it affects how other people view the rest of the world around them and figure out how to, act accordingly. In other words, if you're going to do a sort of study with a hidden camera where, a homeless person asks certain people for money and you see how those people react. If half of the people know a camera's on them, they're going to be the nicest person in the world to the homeless guy. If the other half don't know it, they might be, honest in their reaction and, and do something that makes them look bad. And again, that makes the study worthless because, people knew they were being watched or didn't. And that affects how, laws are made and how everything is done in the world. Again, privacy is a major, major thing for other than the obvious reasons. Are there negatives? Sure. You say the pedophiles and everything like that. But the question becomes, what's more important? Is it worth it to do this and maybe, let a pedophile slip through the cracks every, 1,000 people? Or go with what you guys are talking about and let the world expand creatively and scientifically? And to me, the answer is obviously the latter. No matter what.
Well, the founders of the country answered that question, right? Like, it would be much better from a crime fighting perspective to allow the police to just barge into whatever house they wanted.
Yep, you're right.
Way more rapists that way. You would catch more murderers, more pedophiles. Or if you put cameras in everybody's house, it would definitely reduce crime. But the founders said we would rather have a realm of privacy and make it harder for the police to catch these dangerous criminals. So we're not going to let them barge into any house. They can only go into the houses where they can have a probable cause warrant proving that there's a criminal inside. That's the essence of what it means to be American and to live in a free country.
Right. When you're dealing with human beings, you have to make compromises like that. You just do. The world presents you with compromises when you're making a law, when you're making a society, a government figuring it out. You have to sacrifice certain things, and I agree with you. The way that you and I seem to be in favor of, to me, is the only real rational way to think. My producer's saying I think my time is up with you, Glenn. Is that true? I mean, you gotta get going.
Yeah, but I have another interview that I'm about to do in about 4 minutes, but I totally enjoyed the discussion. Your questions are great.
Again, it's like, I apologize if I seem a little like a stumbling over my words a little bit, but I get this way when someone's obviously more intelligent than I am. The most impressive thing about when you and Snowden meet to me is also you're watching two incredibly, not just really intelligent people have a conversation, but also what you guys are discussing is so unbelievably important. And the Citizen 4 is great because it's a movie that this documentary, it's about how the subject matter affects not only your personal lives, which a lot of movies do, but it also, you could argue, affects every life on the planet Earth. Which makes it a fascinating film. And Laura Petrus, she is unbelievable, and you guys are a great team. You got anything you're doing with her in the future? Like, what's going on right now? You're working on anything?
Yeah, we actually created a new media outlet together called The Intercept, where we've been working for about a year, and part of the idea is to combine my written journalism with her filmmaking and video journalism in order to make both of our journalism sort of more potent. So you're right, she's a brilliant filmmaker. The fact that the film won the Academy Award has made huge numbers of people around the world see it. And you're right, it's a global topic because there's no such thing as the American internet or the Mexican internet. It's a globally interconnected means of communicating, and it does affect the whole world. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, and you really explained this bill in a way I didn't understand, and I'm sure a lot of other people didn't as well. So I will harp on how important it is to deal with that as well. So, Glenn, again, I really appreciate it. Is there something you want to mention, your Twitter or anything at all, or plug real quick?
No, I'm good.
Okay, I got you.
Thanks, right, Artie. Thanks so much.
Glenn, thanks, buddy. Good luck with everything. I wish you the best, man.
Thanks. Great talking to you.
Take care. All right. Again, I hope I did that some sort of justice, but
great.
I don't know. Again, it's well, we're gonna take a break just because I need to get my head clear, and we'll talk about the Academy Awards and the Oscars and the GOP debate. Listen, again, you got to admit though, Justin not knowing that is way cooler than you not knowing about the GOP.
I didn't. No. I'm gonna let it lie, but that isn't how it went.
We might get into this again. He won't be on Red Eye tonight, so maybe we'll discuss it. Back after this. Oh my God.
Artie Lang becoming
Ready.
a multitasker.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to. We're back. Okay, we solved the whole NSA problem today, and now let's move on. That was great, Glenn Greenwald. We'll talk more about it later. Justin McKinney, great comic, and Joe Matarese, great comic.
Thank you.
They both they're at odds about a certain feud with the GOP and the Academy Awards, and we'll get into that. But again, I woke up today a little bit later, and Dan didn't tell me this because we had this Glenn Greenwald thing going on until just now that Howard talked about me again. Again, when Howard talks about me with this new world of Twitter, it's like fucking an atom bomb gets dropped. Chad from St. Louis is my field reporter. Chad's a good guy, smart guy, and he's a fan of everything in this world. I got a thing here. Okay, from you, Pittsburgh Pete.
Yeah.
Called in today, ripping Artie. Now, Pittsburgh Pete, again, you got to realize the amount of heroin I've done since I was on the, since like 2007. Pittsburgh Pete was a guy who was, again, people tweet me old clips a lot. I guess I had one exchange with him on the air when he called in where I insulted him and he got mad at me. And then he came to one of my shows at Pittsburgh and wanted to do stand-up. I don't know.
I think I met him. He wasn't. He's not Ass Napkin. That's somebody else.
No, that's a different guy. That's actually
Pittsburgh Pete had some sort of weird talent. Did you bring him on stage in Pittsburgh? Or am I wrong?
I might have. But I brought Ass Napkin. I tried to. They all showed up. They were ossified drunk to this one stage. One gig I did in Pittsburgh. And again, I don't know. I said something that insulted him and calling him stupid or something like that. And he really. But Pittsburgh Pete is one of these guys. I've since got sent different things by him that he's written. Like as far as his profile is concerned, Pittsburgh Pete is one of these guys who's so delusional that he actually, in not an ironic way, in a dead serious way, in his bio refers to himself as a legendary radio caller, like that's possible, like Hall of Fame radio caller. Like in other words, I guess. The way he calls into the Stern Show. Right. And again, to show you the inner workings of the Stern Show, not to blow up Pittsburgh Pete's bubble, but my God, he's just, goofed on relentlessly when the mics aren't on, and we're afraid of him like we are most whackpackers.
You did say some of the whackpackers had publicists. Well, I remember you telling me that.
This kid is clearly, I don't know what happened to him, but he's a guy who really thinks that. He went over to the dark side where he gets into argument. I've seen threads of him arguing on Twitter where he says to people like, well, you've called in maybe 2 shows in St. Louis. I've called in New York. I've been on the air. Like he was smart. He gives credits because he called into Stern. So, I mean, I don't know if you should be, I guess you should be maybe scared of that person or you're not scared of that person. We should be scared of Hyperjeric or you're not scared of him. I don't know. You can make an argument either way.
I'm scared of all super fans. I think it's a little, I appreciate them, but I feel like it's a little odd.
Well, a little odd. Well, okay, super fan. No, I'm not talking about fans. I'm talking about Hyperjeric,
where they come to every single thing.
Again, Packers are different than super fans.
This guy Chad from St. Louis is an example of a guy who's a really big fan, but he's clearly not crazy. He's got stuff. I think the difference is they have stuff going on in life.
Right.
Pittsburgh Pete, I would assume, has nothing else to cling on to if he's saying that. But to me, my rule is you should be really afraid of a super fan who's like a whackpacker, but if they also have the name Pittsburgh in there, if they have the word Pittsburgh, the city of Pittsburgh in their nickname, then it's extra scary. So Pittsburgh Pete is on a lot of lists. That I want the NSA to get from me. Okay, so he called in today, ripping me. Called my podcast amateurs. No shit. Who made?
All of them are.
I make that point every day. My theme song is my air conditioning unit humming.
He really puts a mic up to the air conditioning. That's his music.
I make fun of it every day, Pete. You're not breaking new comedic ground. I work. I have an 8-foot commute every morning, and I've been late 11 times.
Including today.
Yeah, exactly. Today I was late. It's amateurish. Okay.
So that makes it 12 then.
First, that's like him saying, first of all, a lot of the Harlem Globetrotters are black. First of all. That's the exact same point. Okay. But okay, here's where I take umbrage. I was gonna again. I didn't want to become the guy who. First of all, Chad, say hi, Chad. What's up, buddy? Chad from St. Louis is on the phone.
Uh-oh.
Chad?
Hey.
Hey, buddy.
Sorry.
First, if the city St. Louis is in your name, I like you.
Oh, absolutely.
Pittsburgh,
all
I'm
right,
upset.
Chad.
Pittsburgh. This is Justin McKinney and Joe Matarese.
New Hampshire Justin,
Yeah.
Cherry Hill Joe.
Again, if you're an expert pool player and you have a city in your nickname, that's fine. Like Des Moines Dave. In pool, that's fine. But,
that would be scary.
Okay, so Chad is a guy a bright guy who got involved with this whole me, Howard, and John thing, and he has a really unique, sort of smart, educated view on it. So we take him seriously. But okay, I don't care if Pittsburgh Pete calls me amateurish on my podcast, but he said he's ripping a guy who I like. He says Shuley. He said this to Howard on the air. He claims that Shuley talked shit about Howard with Artie, etc. Howard talked about how. Okay, so let me just say this real quick, and then Chad, I'll let you get into detail about it. Shuley has never talked shit about Howard to me. As a matter of fact, he says nothing but nice things about Howard to me. And I say nothing but nice things to people. I talk about how it's weird about him liking Ellen's dancing, but, if that's all you say about a friend, that's a pretty good friendship. I basically, my point is always that Howard is a guy who did nothing but help all of us. I mean, how many times are you going to point that out? I mean, Howard knows that. But Pete is a guy, Pete's an example of a guy in Howard's world who is talentless, who thinks that the way he's going to get on Howard's good side is snitching. Pete wants to be. If Pete could be a comedian by now, he's been around for 10 years. He should have at least 5 minutes together where he does some stand up. He can't write stand up or be funny in that way. So he's the guy who calls Howard and says Shuley's talking shit. Look, it doesn't affect my world anymore. Howard clearly has moved on. If Howard was mad about some of this stuff, really mad, I mean, it's not even a fight. He's capable of burying me in some sort of radio fight. But it's clear. He doesn't care, and it's clear I'm not trying to start a fight. He knows that, too. It's just two friends talking in a way that's critique, but from a good place, a good-hearted place. Pete's trying to turn that into something different. Now, clearly, again, I've moved on. I have stuff going on in my life career-wise that I'm so blessed with. I'm very lucky, actually. But Shuley's a guy that doesn't deserve this shit, and it's lies. I'm telling you right now, it's a lie, and I have to defend Shuley, which is why I'm speaking. Chad, what exactly did he say about Shuley in particular?
So I think he just said that Shuley was, like you said, talking shit about Howard to other folks behind Howard's back, and then he mentioned you.
Right.
To which Shuley came in, and he's like, I've never been on Artie's podcast, and Howard said that he knew he hadn't, but Pete, I think he was on Twitter afterwards saying that you would come out and defend him.
Say it again. Who would come out and defend me?
Pittsburgh Pete said that you would defend him.
I would defend him in what capacity?
Because Shuley said that he was talking to a lawyer about slander, and so Pete said that he would subpoena you, and that you would have the truth.
Okay, well, Pete, I'm telling Pete right now, do not do that. And also, Pete, if you find a lawyer that takes this case, I'd like that guy's number too, because the NSA should investigate him.
Well, he had to wait until about 10 o'clock in the morning for the public library to open so he could get computers.
No, again, it is. Listen, so Shuley's. Wait, so who's claiming slander? Shuley?
Shuley was jokingly claiming.
Oh,
that
jokingly.
he
Okay.
slandered him.
Yeah. Okay, listen. And again, I, as a matter of fact, there was some umbrage I took with all those guys there when I left, and Shuley's a guy that knows that so there were some things I had to be sort of talked to about to get out a better place with him, because I thought maybe I was betrayed by people and I was wrong, and I have no reason for overly protecting Shuley. I consider him a good guy, a friend, but he's not the kind of friend where I would lie for him. There's no reason for me to lie for him. Pete, again, you're making yourself sound more and more delusional with every time you open your mouth. Shuley has never badmouthed Howard. Nobody at that show has. Everybody has complete reverence for the guy. And, again, I never do either, other than, say it's odd, like every other fan publicly does, how he likes Ellen dancing, or he's friends with Rosie O'Donnell, or some of the people he used to bash. As a fan, you wonder that, but that's not me hating Howard or having a problem with Howard. To me, even with that stuff, it's still the best radio show on the planet, because Howard's talking. I've said that. If you hear his voice, it's probably the best show out there. But again, Pete's not going to hurt my world at all. But I don't want this to affect Shuley, because he did nothing wrong. I don't know why he would say something like that. It's clear that Pete wants a job there. That's what the issue is. And he looks at a guy like Shuley as his equal. Shuley's a guy who called the show a lot. For you people who don't know, when we first, after 9/11, all that scroll thing started to happen. Everybody had the scroll underneath, like CNN did. So the E! channel started doing the scroll.
Right.
And when they did the scroll for a show, it would take up half the screen, so it affected how you watched the show. Talk Soup was on. When the scroll came on, you only saw half of Greg Kinnear, whatever, back then. So Howard hated it. He hated the scroll because he would get mad at it, and rightfully so. When the scroll came on, you'd see his face got distorted and everybody looked weird,
You don't want me to do my perfect Howard Stern impression, right?
No, that's not appropriate for this particular time. That was Cherry Hill Joe.
I also want to say for the record that I've hung out with Shuli a lot doing gigs with you, and I've done gigs outside of working with you. And if even a guy who could never get it back to Howard, I've never heard Shuli once say anything but how much he loved being there.
Well, that's a good point. Okay, Pete, if you're listening, do not subpoena Joe Matarese. I mean, again, a lot of people would say that. I'm glad you said that. Yeah, that does prove a point where, like, even in private, he's not guilty of anything. But again,
and like what you said a second ago, Shuli was a super fan before he got the job, and he still is a super fan. That's kind of his hook.
That's the point I'm trying to make. Is that okay? This is how Shuli got on Howard's radar, because he knew Howard hated those scrolls. He did a smart thing. Shuli was a guy who was doing stand-up in Vegas. All right, he lived in Las Vegas, and we were like number one in Vegas at the time. And people would always try to call in to make Howard laugh and get noticed. Shuli started doing a real smart thing. He knew Howard hated the scroll, so when he saw a scroll interrupt the show, he would write down what the scroll said. In other words, here's what was so important to the E! channel that they had to fuck up and distort. Yeah. The best and the most popular show on the channel. And it was always the funniest shit. It was always like, Britney Spears stubbed her toe today in Malibu at the Exxon station. And he would just, all he had to do was read off the shit. It was just a great idea because it all sounded mundane when you read it. And we laughed at it every time. It was a great idea. It was a great angle Shuli had. So after like 5 or 6 times of that, he got noticed. And when we moved over to Sirius, a bunch of different departments came up. Howard had the idea of the news channel, and that opened up like 40 jobs for people. And one of them were correspondents, news correspondents, and he hired Shuli to be one of them because he was a guy who loved the show, perfect for news for the Stern Show, and a funny guy who had proved he was funny by calling in. So clearly, Pittsburgh Pete looks at a guy like Shuli and wants to secretly plot his death or something. He's like, this guy is me. I'm just as good as him. I could call in. I could be funny. But instead of coming up with an angle like that thing Shuli did, he can't. So he's trying to fucking tell Howard, hey, Shuli's talking shit behind your back. And maybe Howard will fire. I'm telling you, this is how he thinks, as delusional as this sounds. Maybe Howard will fire Shuli and say, this Pete guy, thanks for bringing this up. Pete, you come here. And you're now the news guy. And that's not beyond the realm of possibility. Chad, would you agree as a fan with that assessment, or am I completely wrong and he should subpoena me?
No, absolutely. I agree with your assessment. Did Shuli come down to Vegas for one of the shows that you guys did down there at the Hard Rock?
Well, yeah, you're right. He was really smart in the sense that right after 9/11, right after Shuli started doing that and was known, again, life is all about luck sometimes. We went to Vegas with the show in February of 2002, 4 months after 9/11, and it was a big deal. And Shuli showed up, and of course he called ahead and he said, "Gary, look, I'm coming down. I'm the guy who calls in with the scrolls. I live in Vegas. I'm a comic. Can I come down?" Of course, we were like, "Yeah." He showed up. We saw him. He got on the air like that. He got into our world. But again, my point is, he got into our world from being funny. Shuli proved he was funny. Yeah. And Pete is just
making up shit.
He's making up shit, which is really a microcosm, a different version of what that show is. My point I was trying to make is there's talented people on the show, like Fred, like Benji, like Will Murray is a producer, JD. These guys have talent. They can be funny. JD has proven that he can edit tape and is good with tape and in a funny way. Shuli in the news correspondent, Steve Langford, they all had a talent. Other people don't have talent, and they have to snitch to Howard. That's how they get on Howard's good side. They can't get on his good side by being funny, so they do it in another way. So that happens in the show, too.
You know what it reminds me of? I remember going to you for advice a while back, and one thing that always sticks out to me is you would always say, dude, stop all, you don't need to think about all that crazy shit.
Right.
Just be as funny as you can on stage. That's what you used to always say. Just work on your act, and that's it. And like you're saying, like as a comedian, that's what you do. And if you want to, like you're saying right now, you want to be on the radio and be funny, then just you got to write some funny shit. You got to come up with angles. You can't shit on people.
Right. Well, no, that's a good point. In every sort of profession, you want to be. Again, Chad is talking to us now because Chad doesn't claim to be a comedian, but he said, "Look, Art, I have some thoughts on the Stuttering John thing." And then he sort of really blew us away off the air with what he thought about it. He got on the air. And he was really articulate and did a great interview with me about it, bringing up shit I didn't even think of. And everybody on Twitter and the people reacted and go, wow, that guy knows his shit. So he's still in our world. And by the way, Chad's going to contribute quite a bit to the show, hopefully. I asked him to talk about a lot of different subjects. And I asked him to come back on because he was good at what he did. He was not begging for it or just making up shit. I want to know what evidence Pete has that Shuley ever talk shit about Howard to me. What? How could he possibly know anything about that?
And what does he consider talking shit? What would it be? Like him saying, what would be considered?
I don't know. That's again, Chad, what were you going to say? What did you say? What did you think about that?
Well, I can give you an idea about a recent Pete event. I mean, he hasn't been on Howard in a long time. And then a couple of months ago, what he had done is, Joey Boots, Artie?
Of course.
Yeah, at High Pitch. They were out at Pittsburgh doing an event, whatever it is that High Pitch does at these bars. I think he was bartending, but Pete came by outside, and apparently he works as a guy handing out flyers for a strip club in Pittsburgh.
Who does? Oh, Pete.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And he came up to Joey Boots, and he started yelling at him, calling him a faggot, and then punched him.
Wow.
And then Joey just like pushed him back or something, and then Pete ran away. Wow. And he used this to call into Howard. So it was
So he instigated a confrontation to call in about.
And I actually heard it today on my way down.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I did. It was very short. And my takeaway was that Shuley and Howard both thought that it was he was just making up shit.
Okay.
Trying to stir up it. Like, I didn't think it was it. Do you agree, Chad? It was kind of like, I don't think they felt that there was any validity to it.
Yeah, it was one of those things where you kind of cringe because it's obvious that he really wants to get on the air.
Okay. Well, good, because reading it in print, you never know what could happen. I'm glad. I was just as surprised because I don't know what Pete's talking about. He's getting kind of desperate. And again, Pete, you probably don't listen to this because it's amateurish and beneath you, but if anyone plays this for you on a professional radio show.
You know what he does listen to, though? He's obsessed with Elisa Giordano.
Who's that?
Benji's girlfriend.
Oh, you see, you're talking about
Lisa.
someone I don't know about.
I taught her stand up.
Okay, no,
that was hilarious.
Which is why I've never heard of her.
Students. she bailed on comedy.
A lot of us will never hear of her.
Yeah.
You don't hear, it's like, No, I'm kidding. You don't hear Kevin Hart. I taught him comedy. No.
He's not going out with her anymore, is he?
Who?
Benji. That's not his girlfriend anymore, isn't they break up?
Again, Chad, I'm sorry. I know very little. I know the name. I know because it's after my time. She was. I know Benji dated her, and she was a writer on the show. Or what happened first, the chicken or the egg? Did they date first, or Benji met her at the show?
She was on the show.
She was Miss Howard Stern.
Yeah, that's right. She was Miss Howard Stern, and she said then that Benji was gross and she would never have anything to do with him. But then eventually they started dating. And then when Benji got fingered by Perez Hilton.
That I remember. Yeah, I was in rehab when someone told me that.
That was supposedly in exchange for her getting a writing credit on the show.
Again, I went through a period of time. I was in group therapy in rehab down in Florida, and I was in group therapy with 3 super fans of the show. But basically Pittsburgh Pete, but imagine he's in group therapy with you in rehab. And every time we sat down in the morning in rehab, I got updates from them on the Stern Show. Because their friends would call them and go, "Hey, yesterday Benji got fingered," and I go, "Okay, I have to, get into group therapy now, but thank you." Hey, yesterday they talked about you. They said that you, I don't know if this is true, but did you do heroin on the show? Yeah, I'll go to get into that later in group therapy. Thank you for bringing that. Like that level of, updates. So I don't really know who you're talking about, but I know a little bit about her. And, a guy like Pete is again, what happens, Howard taught me this about people who call in too. If you call in long enough and you think it's going to change your life, and you start when you're 22 years old doing it, and you have hope and you're young, and it doesn't look weird that you wear a Steelers jersey to a wedding, that type of thing. You're a different person. You're not looked at as pathetic and worrisome. But Howard says, with radio, it's a double-edged sword. People become a real passionate fan of yours, and they love you, and they buy your stuff. But they can also start to think like you're talking directly to them on the radio, and you want them to do stuff, and that's a very real...
Become delusional.
Yeah, that's a very real... I'm not saying Pete is there, but he sounds like he might be on the road to something. If he's instigating fights with Joey Boots, who, by the way, came out as being gay.
Yeah.
He really came out as... So he came out and said he's a faggot, which, of course, would initiate some sort of confrontation.
Is that the word he used? I'm a faggot.
I think he said, you're a faggot.
He said, I'm a faggot.
He said, you're a faggot. Not you.
No, you said...
I said I'm a faggot?
No. You said he came out on the show and said he was a faggot. I said, is that the word he used about himself?
I meant to say, well, actually, Joey Boots might have.
He would?
Yeah.
Everybody, I'm a faggot.
He was that kind of guy, yeah.
To be gay and call yourself a faggot.
Well, Dan came out the other day on the air and yelled out, I'm a fag, at the end of the show.
I didn't mean it, Chad.
No, he didn't. No, he wasn't really.
That Darren Aronofsky movie is about a delusional fan who's a caller.
Which one?
It's called The Fan.
Oh, The Fan. Is that Aronofsky?
I think so.
Okay.
Am I wrong?
I don't know.
Patton Oswalt one?
Patton Oswalt, yeah, he plays a delusional. He's rehearsing the fucking calls.
Well, that's a sports guy, which, okay, when you add sports to it, it is another aspect of it. Dan, you're leaning into the microphone.
Chad, do you know who Rick Steves is?
Again, the Rick Steves stuff.
I do because I'm a fan of the Artie Quitter podcast.
Okay, AJ Benza, who will be on the show tomorrow, tweeted me tweeted something, and I said, did he really say that? He found the Rick Steves broadcast where he was talking about a 1,200-foot tower outside of Berlin, and he actually said this sentence. He says, and AJ said, I'll play it for you tomorrow. That's a brilliant erection from the 1960s. Again, I said to AJ, did he really say that? He goes, my hand to God, Art. It's like a microphone drop moment. All right, Chad, thanks, man, for clearing that up. Because again, we'll discuss this here. Like I had Gilbert on yesterday, and I always have an absolute blast with Gilbert, and we get carried away. And Gilbert wanted to bring up a little bit about the fact that he hadn't been on the show because he's genuinely hurt because he loves Howard and the show. And then of course we had Billy West on the day before, so it made sense. And Billy was very eloquent and said how much he loved Howard. I don't want to be known. I opened up this fucking can of worms. I don't want to be known as the guy who gives you my Howard update every day, reviewing the show. Or I don't want to be a thorn in his side. I just was honest about shit because the fans wanted me to, and that's it. And my only issue was, again, I would have had this closure with Howard if he would have allowed me to talk. That was my one bitch. So all of a sudden it's surreal. It's 2015, and Howard and I communicate through my microphone in the kitchen and him on Sirius. It's fucking weird.
It's great for business.
I mean, I guess it is. But again, I love Howard. I didn't mean for all the shit to come out. And again, Pete, we're joking around, buddy. If this does get back to you, believe me, don't go through this shit with a lawyer because Shuley has never talked shit to me or apparently anybody else about Howard in a bad way. And it sounds like they didn't believe him anyway. So go ahead. What?
I was going to say, I'm also offended that they said that this is not a professional podcast because amateur. I want to say for the record that I fixed your mic stand a week ago, and we sound so much more professional. I fixed it. There was a wobble.
And
if anyone has noticed, the new professional sound.
Thank you, Joe.
And you've seen the Fixin' Joe setup.
Yeah.
So this is pretty professional.
Yeah, Joe is fixing Joe and fixing Artie's stand.
Dude, you are I got to say, out of all the podcasts that I've done, this is the highest end setup. And you got a snake on the table. Nobody has the snake with all the mics.
You got to realize, P. Yeah, P. Listen, I spent $12,000 on this fucking equipment.
You got a fucking rack. You don't even need all this equipment, but we have it.
And actually, by the way, Pete, I got to say, thank you for bringing me up. Ironically enough, because of your mention mention will get more professional. Because of your mention, we did go up in subscribers enough directly because of the Pete mention, according to our research, and we can now add a video component. So,
Where's that camera going to be?
I don't know. Away from my back here.
Just Artie's back.
Chad, so thanks, and again, Chad, thanks for agreeing to be a part of the show. You're going to definitely come on and do some more interviews and stories, right?
Yeah, whatever you want, man. I got two things for you right now, real quick. One, just so Dan can mark it on his calendar, this October 31st, Halloween, Rick Steves' podcast. It's the description is just two words, so it's Haunted Europe, semicolon. Haunted America, semicolon. Sweet Tooth.
Nice.
I don't know what Sweet Tooth has to do with the other stuff, but I guess we'll see. We'll have to tune in.
That's a major tune in right there.
And so you talked to that guy from The Interceptor earlier today, right?
Yes.
So I assume you talked about national security stuff and surveillance and that kind of junk.
Well, we talked about the fact that, we talked about how Citizen 4 was done so well, and I was a fan of it, and how it affected his life since, and how, he reacted to this bill that came into the news yesterday about how they're trying to pass a bill that basically will unravel what they did with Snowden. But, yeah, that's what we talked about, yeah.
Yeah, because I was telling Dan yesterday, so I used to work for a government contractor doing work for the Air Force and stuff, so I had a clearance and all this stuff, and it was very important, but the clearance work. But there was this funny story that I had there, because I used to like to fuck around with the people who worked there because they took it so seriously. So I worked with this dude in his mid-50s, and he's from Biddeford, Maine.
I used to live there. I used to live in Biddeford, Maine.
How many black people do you think are in Maine?
Well, it's funny. I haven't been a cop. I would say a total. I don't know if
he was a cop, by the way, so he would know.
I was a cop in Maine, but true story, Artie. And I actually did this on the Tonight Show when I did Leno. But literally, when I did stand up in New York City at the comic strip, I got off stage and a black guy came up to me because I was talking about being a cop. He's like, "Were you really a cop?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I was up in Maine for 7 years." He's like, "You ever mistreat a black man up there while you're working?" I'm like, "I never saw a black man. I was up there working." So that was my actual.
Wow,
so it's true. Yeah.
I have a similar story. I did stand up at the comic strip once on the Upper East Side, and in the late '90s, and I got off stage, and this black guy came up to me and said, "I have your cocaine." And we went in the bathroom. So mine's a different ending. Ending. No, but so again, that's you never saw a black man up there.
Exactly.
Okay, so go ahead.
This company that I worked for, they had an award come out for, it was the Diversity Award, that you needed to nominate somebody else who you work with and say why they're very diverse.
Yeah.
So I wrote an entire essay about this white dude from Biddeford, Maine, who, I made up a bunch of stuff about how, I never said he did anything, but I just said how diverse things he said were and what he thought was. And he wins the award for the company.
So
we had to go to an award ceremony with the vice presidents, like shaking hands, like talking to these people.
Wait. So in other words, he won the award and the company was based in Biddeford, Maine.
No, he was from there, and this was in Massachusetts. He would actually drive down every day. But the thing was, he was the least diverse, as you define it in that context,
and he won.
You could imagine, and he won the award. It's on a complete fabrication. So it was.
It was based on what you wrote, basically.
Right.
Did you get in any trouble for it?
No, I was put on a watch list at that company, though, because there was, when you walked out of the lobby, they had photos of all the board of directors, and what I would do is I would kiss my hand and then rub it on the president's face.
Yeah, that sounds odd.
Every day I walk out, I would do this. And then one day I try to swipe in, and my swipe doesn't work. It just beeps. So I try again, and it beeps. And so I go up to the woman at the reception desk, and I go, "Hey, I can't swipe in." She swipes my badge, and she goes, "Oh, you're going to have to talk to us every time you want to come in now."
Oh, my God.
I was like, why? And they're like, apparently you were acting strangely in the lobby the past few weeks.
Well, listen, I don't know if I blame them totally. If I saw Dan doing that, I'd ask for clearance.
Again, it's really fun to do stuff like that, especially when, it's classified stuff, blah, blah, blah. People take it super seriously, but it was really fun to, like, fuck with the security there, which I guess makes me a dick.
No, it doesn't make you a dick. It makes you funny. You're fun. But again, in life, you got to be careful, Chad. Just put a limit on that type of behavior. But it is, oh, God, it's hilariously funny. Fucking with people like that is what, the reason I was born. But just be careful, because one day you might, I don't know, they could work up something where you're arrested.
Well, I'm in medical school now, so, you don't get into that kind of trouble.
Dude, what year in medical school are you?
I actually just finished my second year, and I'm doing a PhD now in neuroscience.
I gotta tell you, my ex-fiance was trying to get into medical school for a while, and she's like this amazing student, and she was, acing all the tests and everything, and this was just the preliminary part to try to get in, and she was doing really well, but she ended up stopping because she realized, she wasn't able to live the kind of life she wanted to lead and do that. And it had nothing to do with intelligence or anything like that. It just had to do with the fact that when you get into medical school, you got to disappear for a while. Like your face is just in a book. It's incredible how great it is that people still want to do that. The kids, young kids with all this bullshit in their face, like the Kardashians and easy money and stuff like that, and whatever sports, they still want to become a fucking doctor. It's a lot of real hard work that people don't even realize goes into it.
The thing is, if she had a personality at all, then that probably would have kept her from being admitted to medical school, because I think that's part of the requirement.
But I was saying, what made you want to do it?
It just seemed interesting to me. I don't know.
What kind of doctor do you want to be?
Psychiatrist.
Oh. Yeah, people don't realize you got to go. A shrink's got to go through the full medical school like a surgeon does. You just got to do the whole thing.
But you've seen psychiatrists, and so have I. Why are they the weirdest out of all doctors? They're always odd.
I think what Chad just said. I think a guy who licks his hand and then puts it on. Like in other words, if you knew your shrink did that once, licked his hand and rubbed it on the face of people who ran a company and was flagged for it, I don't know. Would you? I mean, knowing Chad, I would still see him, but people might think it's up. What were you going to say, Justin? I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say that I have a thing with doctors where, like, I was about to get the laser eye surgery, and I was, I got really, I'm paranoid of all that stuff, so I literally went on and looked at a picture of him, and, like, he was almost like too good looking. Like, I don't want the good looking doctor because I figure he's getting laid at med school.
I agree with you.
I want an ugly doctor.
I agree. They got too much.
It sounds weird.
They have too many options in life.
Unless they're a gynecologist, and then if you're that good looking.
That's a great point about my ex-fiance. Beautiful, beautiful girl. Like, you see her and you go, well, she probably has options on a Saturday night other than studying.
Yeah.
And I see the same thing about a dude. It's like a guy
nerdy.
Like,
surgery? Come on.
Or if they have time for any kind of self-improvement.
Yeah.
Like if a doctor doesn't have a big beer gut and stuff, it's like, well, what are you doing subs for? Shouldn't you be studying my heart?
Yeah.
It's
I got to tell you though, coming into school for the first year here, so I'm older, right? And I come back, and all these kids just came out of college straight into medical school, which to me seems crazy because it's a lot of commitment for very little world knowledge, But
right.
My theory is that they don't drink at all during college because they're trying to get into med school, and then they all almost fucking kill themselves in the first year of med school, just getting hammered, fucking everything, and throwing up over everything.
Is that true? Yeah.
A lot of med schools are pass-fail now, so you either pass or you fail, so you have to just beat 70% or something like that on the test. Which
that's not a good thing. My God, pass-fail.
It's good if the students are good students. It's bad if the people are morons. And I mean, you get the trouble is that you get a lot of people who are really good at taking tests, but if you put them in a real world situation, they wouldn't know what the fuck to do.
Right.
And that's when I get kind of scared thinking about doctors, right? Because a lot of the people that I work with, I cringe at the idea of there being my doctor.
Well, that's right. Well, you're right. You know what? My example too is. People who think they could learn a lot in life from seeing a priest do a sermon, at a church instead of watching a guy speak at an AA meeting. At some level, because both things, AA is based completely in spirituality. It started out as a Christian thing. It started, they had to take out the word God and say higher power because of political correctness in that big book. But it was two guys who were Catholic, and the whole model of it, from the 12 steps being like the 10 commandments, blah, blah, blah. It's about the Christian way of living and believing in something bigger than you. And I don't understand why people get sort of solace and peace from a priest speaking, but at the same time, it's limited. To me, if you see a guy speak at an AA meeting who's been through all these different crazy life situations, drug deals, this, jail, the other thing, to me, you could get more out of what he says to you as far as life advice is concerned than you can from a priest who's just preaching from, the faith he has and has never done anything crazy because he's been in a church or a seminary or whatever, a basement somewhere studying the Bible. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I just think people need to be honest, and have real experiences, and then not feel ashamed of having done drugs or whatever, because these med students are very scared of getting in trouble, right? So I feel like a lot of them really hold back. And then when do you ever have those experiences if your whole life is planned out for you?
Well,
right?
if a priest is honest to me, you might get more out of it. Like just one time, a priest who starts off a sermon by, just making up shit from the Bible to me isn't as great. Just one time you'd like to see an older priest go. So there's one time I was fucking a kid and, we were in the...
I was going to say, at AA, there's less incidents of child molestation.
It probably is. I bet
Making
there
the
is.
comparison.
Yeah, it's, again, you want it. It's why older people sometimes are a stupid older guy. Sometimes is more important to talk to than an unbelievably smart younger guy, just because the older guy's been through shit.
I was just telling Justin, I think on the ride over here, about this show that I watched on MTV that I thought was really good, and I was surprised because it's MTV, but it's geared towards young people. But basically, it's kids that are going down the wrong fucking way with their life, and they make them go to prisons, and you see these prisoners like fucking scaring. They're doing the whole scared straight thing, and it actually works. And you see the kid like the next day getting interviewed, and he's fucking.
And they're not gay anymore.
They're not gay. They're literally like better now. And it's like a 15-year-old kid. He's got tattoos all over his neck. He's all he looks like exactly like those guys in prison, but he's just a younger version. And then he sees it, and he's like, fuck this.
No, exactly. It's everything gets neutralized through certain life experiences. You get like everybody's like, whoa, you become human at some point.
Justin and I were also talking about the girl who got thrown out of her fucking seat, and the cops he got fired today.
Yeah.
But you're sitting there going, kids just they don't have any fear. They need. I feel like almost every high school kid should just go to prison for a day. Here you go. It's part of your fucking high school curriculum.
Did they get to the? I slept late. I didn't see. Did they get to the bottom of what provoked the cop to do that?
No, they don't have anything.
Supposedly, the girl was on her cell phone in the
16
class.
years old, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Disrupting the class.
She's
on
just
the cell phone,
talking.
wouldn't hang up the phone.
Right
off, how pissed off do people get if you're in a public place and someone's on the phone in a classroom, okay? So the teacher says, you got to get rid of your phone, take the phone, wouldn't do it, wouldn't stop. Vice principal comes, he comes down, wouldn't listen to the vice principal.
Well, okay.
Let's bring in the school resource officer. School resource officer says, you got to do it. And she's not listening. She doesn't want to go. You got to come with me. I'm not going. You go, or I'm going to make you.
What are you going to do?
And then it went to that. He got fired. The cop got fired because it was.
That's going to happen because again, it's an out of context video that's all over the fucking.
The bottom line is nobody wants responsibility in this world anymore. It's like that person is partly responsible. Why doesn't anyone say you?
And she kind of punched him. You could see.
I think you're right about that, but I think that's a bad argument because you can't.
It doesn't mean you can still do that.
A better argument is going through the history of what he just said. Of like, first of all, to me, the best argument for the cop is once he starts doing that. Nobody helps her. Like the fact that nobody helps her is these idiot news people go, isn't it a shame that those people didn't help her? Maybe no. What about the angle of like maybe they didn't help her because they all thought she was an asshole who desered it?
The teacher and the vice principal both said they didn't think what the cop did was even excessive. They were right there.
I mean, listen.
I don't know. And at the academy, they don't teach you how to pull someone out of a desk.
No,
there's no way to train.
At the Oscars either.
Or
the GOP.
I talked about something in my my special, my 1 hour special, where there's a viral video of a girl and a guy's on the subway. Did you see this video? It might be a year old now. He's like a 19-year-old kid, headphones on. The girl's swinging at him. This girl's giving him shit. She's calling him like a loser, making fun of him, yelling at him, and like nipping his nose with her hand.
Right, I've seen this.
You've seen it. And then she hits the cell phone out of his... And then you just see his cell phone goes flying across the subway floor, and you see a switch click in his head, and he decides, I have to hit her. Enough. And like, I talk about it on stage where I go, I don't know if I'm old or a New Yorker, but I thought, hell yes. Like, and I feel like...
Well, both. We're both,
We're civil people, but it's just like, what the fuck? Like, just fucking do what you're supposed to do.
Look, we're comedians. We've all had situations with hecklers where a heckler's being so disruptive that you hate them. The people they came to the show with at the table hate them. Everyone in the room hates them, from employees to the other people who paid a lot of money to hear it hate them. To the point where if it ever got to a point where at a comedy club where a cop came in and started doing that to them, you would go, "Yeah, is there another cop available to help him?"
Yeah, you wouldn't interject.
It's like, and you go take any job. Like if you're a barista and a customer comes up and is like, can you make sure there's like in the head they're going, don't tell me my job.
Exactly.
I know. Now imagine you're getting called every name in the book. I'm gonna F you about that. I mean, that's what cops are dealing with.
Right.
No. I mean, it's like they're just getting taunted and teased. And remember we were driving one night in Astoria 15
I still remember
years ago?
that.
You still remember
that was
story?
amazing. That was
barista
right.
yelled at you?
I think it was right. It was very close to the Rodney King thing. Because I remember.
Is that long ago?
That's how long ago.
91.
No,
You're talking 91.
It wasn't in L.A. We were in New York.
We were in New York, though.
No, I'm kidding.
Was that 91?
Yeah.
But he's saying the story was around. The story was around that time.
It was like 6-7 years later.
March of 91.
Yeah, but it wasn't. Yeah, but I remember it being. It was still in our minds. You tell the story, because we were watching. Literally a guy get arrested.
I made the point to Joe. I go, watch. I go through all this police activity, and I haven't been a cop. I just slowed down. I go, watch. I go, I guarantee everybody's. What did I say? I don't even remember. Everyone's claiming.
You said, watch. They're going to act like they're getting beaten up when they're not, because Rodney King scored. He made a lot of money out of the situation. Right. Now that's their motive.
So they were all going, this is police brutality. And
just yelling, ow! The guy wasn't even swinging.
And they're literally taunting at the cop. All the stuff that any normal person would want to punch the guy.
Sure.
And the cops are showing great restraint.
Right.
Showing total restraint. And it's like, and that's the stuff they deal with on a daily basis.
Now picture that. Nowadays, picture that, but now everyone has a cell phone.
Exactly.
Now it's just not just eyewitness reports. You got a bunch of people with their cell phones out, hoping that they get the video or the angle that makes them money or gets them on TV or fucks this cop over. I mean, it's really a scary time. Cops can't. It's what Greenwald just said. How do you act if you know you're being watched? If you most cops will tell you, if you if you go by the textbook as a police officer with police work, no one will get arrested, because if you go by that letter, it's hard to get a conviction, blah, blah, blah. Cops, part of police work is sort of finagling shit and getting it done when you know someone's guilty. And you can't do that if you're being watched. And now they're being watched, not just watched, being videotaped.
The problem with the problem with the cell phones, it seems like it's reality TV kind of blending over into real life, because it's all the editing, right? Because there's no context anymore.
Right. Well, it could be edited too. You're right. Yeah.
There was an actual woman on CNN yesterday with Wolf Blitzer when they were first talking about the story. It's on YouTube. You can watch it. And she just goes right away, like, how could it? And the other three people that were on the board said, what do you mean? We don't know what happened before that. How can you're a defense attorney? They said that to her. How can you not want to hear what? And I'm sitting there going, yeah, like I need to see the before this guy's guilty. I need to see it.
What Chad just said is right. There's the reality TV world there's no context. It's like this. We're going to show you. You were a victim of it. Joe was a victim of it on America's Got Talent.
Right, here's a tiny second, and we're going to judge.
They can make you look like the biggest hero or the biggest asshole. It doesn't matter. You're in their disposal. Go ahead.
If they took that clip of the girl getting thrown on the floor in the school, which you miss at the end, is that if it ran longer, everyone probably stands up and does a slow clap for the officer. Right?
You're right. I mean, listen.
How come there's not one interview with one of those kids on TV saying what they saw? I want to see one kid.
Some of the kids.
Oh, they'll be out.
Some of the kids came to the side of the officer. Look, I looked at it and it did look excessive to me. But my point is, you know what I mean?
I think what happened with the guy is you're right when you look at it. But what happened with the guy is she starts reacting. And then the chair falls, and he does something like he got into a situation where it was out of his control because she was going nuts. She wouldn't stop. The chair does something where it flips, and he's trying. It really was odd looking.
Those desks are tipsy,
right?
Like they're tipsy, and you don't know what you're kind of doing. And it was a confrontation, and it just kind of boom happened so fast. But the fact that he is this big, strong man,
and you got to remember
and
too.
I get it.
This girl grew up in a sense where like I can do nothing wrong. I have such power over this guy. I'm a young black girl. I can do whatever the fuck I want.
That's what's frustrating.
Because you're going to get in trouble if you tell me what to do.
People don't want to listen to authority anymore. Yeah. No one has respect anymore. And did you see the one where the kid pulled out his cell phone? And this was a white teen, and he got shot by the cop 7 times. And the cop did you see that one?
No, when did that happen?
The family just filed a suit in the last couple of weeks. So it was, but what happened was, pulls him over. The cop is just saying, "Hey, license and registration."
No. I'm sorry, I did see.
And he's going, "What did I do wrong, officer? You flashed your headlights at me. I don't have to give it to you. Why are you detaining me? I don't have to." And he's filming him the whole time.
No, if you see that tape,
lays him down on the. He's still filming him like this.
If you see that tape, the cop is you'll root for the cop. But go ahead.
But the kid's just this privileged.
Yeah.
If my kid did that, I'd be like, you know what? You almost going to deserve what's coming to you. You put yourself in that situation. You don't know. And I tell people all the time, I'm like, assume every cop might be a crazy guy. Shouldn't have a badge and a gun. So do what he says. You want to live? Do what he says.
Watch again. What Justin's talking about. You have to watch this. It really is to me the best example of what the fuck we're talking about. This again is a younger white kid in Michigan driving kind of an expensive car, probably a mommy and daddy, a car that they bought him type of thing. Again, I'm assuming all that, but that's what it looks like. The cop pulls him over. And just says, "I need to see your shit." The kid goes, "No, why?" And he's filming him, and he's like, 15 times. He's like, "It's a fucking cop." Just the cop obviously would assume what's in that car. He's protecting something. Is there a gun? Is there weed? What the fuck's in the car? So there's probable cause now in my head for the cop to go, "Listen, you have to do this." And then when he finally gets the kid out, the kid continues to go at him, and he gets him on the ground. And the kid has the phone up like this instead of getting handcuffed. He's got the phone up,
filming.
Yeah, filming him the entire time. And then you lose sight of it. You hear a struggle, and it sounds like the kid came at him, and the cop shot him. And again, like the thing in Ferguson, what people don't realize is a kid doesn't have a gun for a cop to feel his life is in danger, because if a kid comes at you and you have a gun, you got to figure he could get mine.
Exactly.
And so that's you can shoot him.
I've heard people try to say, "Oh, you know what? Why didn't he just get his butt kicked and take his beating? So he's going to pull out his gun because he would have got his ass kicked." No, he could get knocked unconscious. His gun could get taken. That happens.
There's a weapon
quite
in the
regularly.
Fight. Right.
Quite regularly that happens where the weapon
sure.
gets taken, cops get killed, and they do not go home. We can't expect people to want to do that job if we don't have their back as a whole in a profession.
I don't know why anybody would want to do that job. I don't know. It's because at least with doctors, when I was talking, you get paid a lot of money.
Yeah.
These guys do not get that reward.
You know what's happening, Artie? And this is what I don't think anyone's realizing. Because there's such backlash, this whole war on cops, no one wants to do it. In Derry, New Hampshire, a year ago, I believe it was, they had a job opening, 113 applicants, okay? They just had a new job opening, 9 applicants.
Yeah, I know.
Now you're picking from 9 people. What are the odds you're going to get the best of the best
You're
there?
not going to get...
No one's going to want to do it.
Yeah.
So it's fine.
It's like the psychos. Only the psychos want to go to war.
Go after...
It's the same way.
You need them there, though. I was over in Afghanistan. Every one of those kids I was on those helicopters with that I ended up doing jokes about, I was like, these kids are nuts, but thank God they're here. I mean, if you're going to have a war...
I'm just going to do it.
If that debate's over and we're going... You don't need you can't have Ryan Seacrest over there.
I don't mean psychos in that way. When I just mean guys that want to fight. They want to. That's what they want to do. And
but I could argue that you're right in the sense that they're gonna go and probably fight all the time. With cops, it's scary because there's gonna be times where 95% of the time it doesn't need that psycho behavior. You have to be a rational person.
And most are. And look, I did it for 7 years. I knew so many. I never saw that police. I never saw that. They're all good guys. They have families. They want to go home. Yeah, you had a couple.
The
dicks.
last thing
you had
this
a
guy
couple
wants,
guys
yeah,
that,
right.
Yeah, you got guys that maybe shouldn't do it, but as a whole, it's going to backfire.
I want to see the videotape of somebody who's just listening, getting police brutality, where they're going, okay, I want to see that video where it's just someone.
It'd be a
Well,
lot
listen,
easier
all
to
right.
weed it out.
What do you
Well,
want me to
listen,
do?
I'll tell you, in defense of the racial thing, there definitely was a time where black people.
I'm saying
got
now.
absolutely.
I'm not saying.
But no, I think it probably not nearly as much as it used to. But because I know guys I knew that were completely racist who became cops. I mean, completely and utterly racist. But but at the same time, I don't think even a small percentage of them ever let the racism affect their job.
I was going to say, do any you know these bad cops and you talk about them? Was there ever a time where someone was cooperating and they beat the fuck out of them?
Even the kid I talk about now, my buddy the cop. Again, he wasn't one of these guys who was overly racist at all. But he never, ever, ever. I know for a fact let racism come into his job. I know that about him because for a bunch of reasons. Maybe it wasn't for the best of reasons. You don't want to get in trouble or whatever, or because he really, deep down, I think he really wanted to do what was right. He had a history of cops in his family and stuff. But I'm sure there are cops who, join it because maybe, like Justin's saying, if you weed it down, you're not going to get the best people. They might be lying, and maybe they think the race war is going to happen.
You're going to get the bouncers, the guys that want to be bouncers at the bar. The guys that look, you got to listen to me. But almost all of them come from resisting arrest, and it all comes from almost all of the cases come from that.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Stop resisting.
There's
Let it go.
Go ahead, Chad.
I just think we're kind of expecting superhuman behavior from police with their patients.
Sure, we are. I mean, there's a real war going on in the inner city where, you could almost see both sides. It's like cops won't rat on other cops, like the whole Michael Dowd thing. And, look, if that's the case, why would they expect the people they're policing not to have the same exact policy? We're not going to rat on the other people we deal with. So now what happens? You create a line in the sand. And it becomes a real fucking war where no one's going to win. It's hopeless on both fucking sides. It's sad.
It's not pretty.
Hey, I got to jump off, brother.
All right, Chad. Chad, you at any point you could leave.
That's the first time that's ever happened.
Go get your doctorate. Be well, Chad. Good job, buddy.
That is a sign he's a normal guy. He's like, I'm a fan, but I got to go.
Yeah, a guy named Pittsburgh Pete would never say, I got to jump off.
Oh, man.
Again, not to fuck with Pittsburgh Pete either, because probably deep down I should be afraid of him. But again, Shuley never said anything wrong about Howard. And if you think I am, you're not listening to the show properly. Clearly, I got no problem with Howard. I love the guy. It's joking around. We're comics, but. Pete wants in this world, I guess, and he's getting a little desperate. And if that's trying to get Shuley fired, you really should rethink that. Shame on you. Come on. Shuley's got a family. He got in there from being funny. You do the same fucking thing. Don't get in. Talk about bad karma. You're going to get in by trying to rat somebody out for something they probably didn't even fucking do. That's how you get the job? Think of something else. That's my point. Back into this. All right, let's take a break.
End this. Let's take another break. We've already how many breaks?
Justin, what do you want to plug, Justin? Seriously, what do you?
I've got two theater shows I do every year in New Hampshire. Keene, the Colonial Theater in Keene, New Hampshire, and I've got the Music Hall in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. They're two theaters.
Right.
When are they?
Good shit.
JustinMcKinney.com. Justin
What's
with an
the
O, by the
dates
way.
of
No one
Justin
can find me. Justin with an O. Juston.
Owen, okay.
Justin McKinney.
What's the dates of those shows?
November 21st is Keene, and December 26th, day after Christmas, is Portsmouth.
Okay, and
Joe,
Joe, what do you want? Fixing Joe and
Let's get the Twitter got up to 10,000. I made my number.
I'm glad.
Thanks to Dan helping me out. Dan,
I have Twitter too.
At the Joe Matarese. Maybe I can get up to 20,000. At the Joe Matarese and the Bill Burr Show. I guess November 6th, Friday, November 6th, at the Wells Fargo
That's
Center
cool.
in Philly.
That's a big deal.
Can you get me tickets to that?
I want your parents to yell out that he's not good. That's funny from the air.
I want to hear him say, "Break a leg."
I thought that'd be funny if, in the middle of Burr's set, you just hear his parents. I thought my kid sucked. All right, and Dan, thank you. And that's 4 hours and 3 minutes of the podcast.
2 episodes.